Lesson 3, Subtract Integers. Real world link. We have a diving problem. The platform on a diving board is 3 meters high. The actions of a diver climbing up the diving board platform and diving 1 meter below the water surface are shown to the number line at the right. So to demonstrate this, if you were the diver, you start here at ground level. Then you increase to 3 because this is your diving board. Then, as you dive off, you wind up at -1. That means that you're a meter below the water. So in order to show that, that is -4. So this is where you wind up at the end. So the diver's actions can be represented by the subtraction equation. 3 minus 4 equals -1. So number 1, write a related addition sentence for the subtraction sentence. Well, if you have 3 minus 4 equals -1, you could write that as 3 plus -4 equals -1. Because that's the same thing when you're adding a -4, that's the same thing as subtracting 4. So for number 2, we're going to use a number line to find 1 minus 5. Then write a related addition sentence for the subtraction sentence. So if I start at 0, I'm going to add 1. So that way I can be at the number 1. Then I want to take away 5. So that means I go to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Subtracting 5, I go to the left. That leaves me with the answer of -4. So the difference is -4. And the addition sentence, if you have 1 minus 5, is the same thing as saying 1 plus -5. Continuing. All right, so the key concept for subtract integers. The words to subtract an integer, add its additive inverse. So the symbol is p minus q equals p plus -q. But so let's use number examples instead. If we have 4 minus 9, that's the same thing as saying 4 plus -9. And that's going to give you -5 as an answer. 7 minus -10 equals 7 plus +10. So 7 minus -10. Well, I want to add the inverse. So I'm going to do 7 plus +10. You can also rewrite that as 7 plus 10, which equals 17. So when I subtract 7, the result is the same as adding its additive inverse of -7. And that's for this example down here. 6 minus 7 equals -1, or 6 plus -7 equals -1. So again, additive inverse. 7 and -7. I'm sorry, let me restate that. -7 and -7 are additive inverses. They give you the same exact answer. So let's try some examples. We're going to do 8 minus 13. Well, I'm going to change that to an addition problem. So number 1, change my color. 8 minus 13 becomes 8 plus -13. Because I added the opposite. I added and make that into a -13. Well, 8 plus -13 gives me an answer of -5. Then for number 2, it says to find -10 minus 7. I am only changing my second part. I'm only doing an added inverse for the second term, not the first one. The first one still stays as -10 plus a -7. So -10 plus -7 gives me the final answer of a -17. All right, let's try these 3 problems at the bottom. Letter A, 6 minus 12. Want to change that to using additive inverse, so 6 plus -12, which simplifies down to -6. So my answer for letter A is -6. I like to add and put it as a -12 using a different color. So for letter B, -20 minus 15. Well, because it's subtraction, I'm going to add and make it a -15. So that becomes -20 plus -15. Again, you'll notice I didn't change anything about my -20. I kept it exactly the same. I just added and made it into a -15. So -20 plus -15 gives me the answer of a -35. All right, letter C, -22 plus -26. Because I'm doing the additive inverse. So that's plus -26. So -22 plus -26 is a -48. Because they're both negatives, and when I'm adding two negatives, that just gives me a larger negative number. Just like if you were adding two positives, it would give you a larger positive number. All right, let's continue then. Example number 3. We're going to find 1 minus -2 by doing the additive inverse. So let me change the color. 1 minus -2 changing that to adding a positive 2. So that's adding positive 2, 1 plus 2. Well, that becomes 1 plus 2, which equals 3. All right, for number 4, we have -10 minus -7. Well, if there is subtraction, I want to add the inverse. So the additive inverse makes that -10 plus +7. So I'm going to rewrite that, -10 plus 7. That gives me the final answer of -3. All right, so let's try these 3 problems to find out. Letter D, 4 minus -12. I want to do the additive inverse. So I add and make that a positive 12. So 4 plus 12, well, that gives me the answer of 16. All right, letter E, -15 minus -5. Well, I want to add in the inverse, so the additive inverse is adding a 5. So -15 plus 5 gives me the answer of -10. Then for letter F, 18 minus -6, I want to do the additive inverse. So I'm adding the opposite. So that becomes 18 plus 6, which gives me the answer of 24. And I'm going to write both those answers off to the right. So -10 and 24. All right, number 5. I'm going to evaluate x minus y if x equals -6 and y equals -5. I'm going to show this work off to the side. So I'm going to have the expression x minus y. I know that x equals -6 and y equals -5. Well, it's kind of like if you guys are playing sports or perhaps an instrument and someone needs to sub in for you. Well, the letter x, I know the letter x is represented by -6. And then we have the letter y. The y is represented by -5. So I'm going to go in and substitute those values with x and y. So instead of writing x, I'm going to put in -6 minus. Instead of y, I'm going to put in -5. So x minus y becomes -6 minus -5. Because there's subtraction, I want to add the inverse or add the opposite. So that's the additive inverse. So it becomes +5. So -6 plus 5 reduces down or simplifies down to -1. So let's try number 6. We're going to evaluate m minus n, where m equals -15 and n equals 8. Well, I'm going to use my highlighter and differentiate each of them. So my letter m is going to equal -15, and my letter n is going to equal 8. Okay, so this becomes -15 minus 8. Since there's subtraction, I'm going to do my additive inverse. So I'm going to add and make that into a negative 8. So this becomes negative 15 plus negative 8, which there are two negative numbers that I'm adding together, so it's going to be a larger negative. So that gives me negative 23. So let's do these next 3 problems to see if we understand it. Letter G is b minus 10. Well, my letter B, according to my values up here, B is negative 8. So this becomes negative 8 minus 10. And I want to use my additive inverse. So I'm going to add and make that into a negative 10. So negative 8 plus negative 10 becomes negative 18. Because I have 2 negatives that I'm adding together, so it should be a larger negative number. All right, letter H. This is A minus B. Well, I already know that B equals negative 8 from what I highlighted before. Then letter A is 5. So I'm going to replace both of those. So this becomes 5 minus negative 8. Well, I want to do my additive inverse, so I'm going to add and make that a positive 8. That becomes 5 plus 8. Well, 5 plus 8 gives me 13. All right, letter I is C minus A. Well, I know my A value is 5 because I've already highlighted it in blue. And let's use purple. No, not purple. We're going to use yellow for letter C. C is negative 9. So now I'm going to replace that. Negative 9 minus 5. Because C is negative 9, A is 5. Since there's subtraction, I'm going to add and make it into a negative 5. So negative 9 plus negative 5, well, they're both negative, so it'll be a larger negative. That becomes a negative 14. So G was negative 18, H was 13, and I is negative 14. All right, example 7. The temperatures on the moon vary from negative 137 degrees Celsius to 127 degrees Celsius. So we want to find the difference between the maximum and minimum temperatures. So we want to subtract the lowest from the highest. So if we take our lowest temperature, that's a negative 173 degrees. So we want to take our highest temperature, which is 127, and subtract by our lowest temperature of negative 173. So your equation becomes 127 minus negative 173. So because there's subtraction, I want to do my additive inverse. So I add and make that into a positive 173. 127 plus 173. Well, if it helps, you can always show your work off to the side. So that's going to give me 300 degrees Celsius of a temperature difference. So let's try letter J. Brenda has a balance of negative $52 in her account. The bank charged her a fee of $10 for having a negative balance. What's her new balance? All right, well, if she is at negative 52 and the bank charged her a fee for $10, well, a fee means that they're taking away another 10. So there's subtraction. So let's do the additive inverse and making that adding a negative 10. So negative 52 plus negative 10 becomes negative 62. So her new balance is negative $62. Well, let's put that dollar sign right here. So negative $62.